Ever feel like we're living in some kind of Tom Clancy thriller?
Oh, tell me about it.
It's like assassination plots against former world leaders,
Yeah.
nuclear arms races, a whole region ready to like explode. And guess what? This whole U.S. election is tied right into it.
You know, it really is kind of wild how much U.S. politics can shake things up globally,
Right.
especially somewhere like the Middle East, which is already on edge.
Exactly. It's like,
This election isn't just picking a president, it's potentially picking, like, the future of peace over there, you know?
okay, so no pressure voters. Right.
Right.
But seriously, that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We've got this article, really breaks down how intertwined the election is with Iran, Israel, the whole geopolitical game.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the the must-knows for folks to grasp what's going on over there?
Well, got to start with Iran, right?
Yeah.
They are really going for it with these nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And to make it even more messy, they're getting super cozy with Russia.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge red flag for Israel, obviously, who sees a nuclear Iran as
Existential threat, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And we've seen how Israel handles those.
They don't tend to sit around, that's for sure.
That's one way to put it. So both sides are watching this U.S. election like a hawk, you know.
Oh, yeah.
They see it as a huge turning point, could go either way.
So they're both trying to figure out who would be the best U.S. president for them, basically.
Exactly. Analyzing every foreign policy move right now, trying to predict what each candidate might do differently.
Makes sense, yeah. All right, so let's talk about the current administration, how their policies have been playing out in the region. It seems like Biden's strategy has been, to put it mildly, a balancing act.
It's been a tightrope walk, that's for sure.
Mhm.
On one hand, weaken Russia globally.
Mhm.
On the other, try to split China from its allies, which, and this is the kicker, includes Iran.
Right, because love it or hate it, Iran and China are basically BFFs these days.
Becoming more and more chummy, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
To bring Iran to the table, you know, get them to chill on the nukes, the Biden administration made some big moves.
Mhm.
Unfroze billions of dollars of Iranian assets
Yeah.
that were held abroad, for one.
Oh, right, right, those frozen assets.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't speak finance, what's that actually mean?
Basically giving Iran access to a ton of cash they couldn't touch before.
Huh.
The idea was give them some financial breathing room. Maybe they'll ease up on the whole nuclear thing, you know, play nice internationally.
So did it work?
$1 million question, right?
Right.
There's a strong case to be made that it kind of backfired. Instead of using that money to, like, improve their country or whatever, looks like a lot of it went straight into the nuclear program.
Really?
Reports suggest that since those assets were unfrozen, Iran's been going all in on uranium enrichment, better centrifuges, the works.
Wow, so they're closer to a bomb than ever, basically.
That's the worry, yeah. And then just to make it all even more complicated, there's the issue of Iran sending weapons to Russia.
Oh, right, right, for the war in Ukraine, right?
Exactly. Those kamikaze drones, mainly.
Yeah, the drones.
It does seem kind of counterintuitive, right?
Well, yeah. Like, hey, we want to be friends with the West, but also here's some weapons for your enemy.
Right. But it shows you how tangled up these relationships are.
It's true. Complicates things for the U.S. trying to, manage all these global crises at once.
Big time.
It's like the butterfly effect, you know? One thing happens over here, suddenly there are ripples across the globe.
For sure.
Speaking of ripples, there's another big factor we haven't even gotten to yet, how this upcoming election could completely change U.S. foreign policy.
Absolutely. And that's where the stakes get even higher.
Right.
A new administration means potentially rethinking the whole situation.
Especially with someone like, say, Trump, who wasn't exactly shy about his stance on Iran before.
Right, his approach was definitely different.
Yeah, one word for it.
The sanctions, the assassination of General Soleimani, that all sent shockwaves through the region, you know, showed a much more aggressive, unpredictable side of U.S. foreign policy.
So how do you think a potential second Trump administration would even begin to handle Iran compared to now?
Well, if we're going off past behavior, I think we'd see a much tougher stance toward Iran.
Okay.
Think even harsher sanctions, maybe even more crippling than before, and that's saying something.
And what about, the military option? Is that back on the table, you think?
It's definitely possible, though whether it would actually happen is another story entirely.
Right, right.
But just the possibility of Trump coming back has thrown a wrench in an already volatile situation.
It sounds like no matter who wins, we're looking at a turning point.
Exactly. The next president's choices will have huge consequences, not just for the Middle East, but globally.
So let's say, like, hypothetically, the U.S. does get tougher on Iran. What would that even look like?
Well, tougher than those sanctions we talked about.
Yeah, like beyond just that.
Okay, well, it could mean a bigger U.S. military presence in the region, for starters.
Okay.
More ships in the Persian Gulf, more troops in those nearby countries. You know, the whole 9 yards.
Just like a show of force.
Exactly. Got to show a run, and the U.S. isn't messing around.
Right, but couldn't that make things worse?
Oh, absolutely.
Like even start a conflict?
It's a real possibility. And it's not even just about Iran's reaction. Some U.S. allies might not love it either.
Right, they don't want to get caught in the middle.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be the accidental casualty in this whole thing.
Exactly. And then there's a whole question of how Russia and China would react.
Right, because this isn't just a regional thing anymore. It's a global power struggle.
It's like we hear about Russia, China being these big players, but what are they even trying to get out of the Middle East?
Good question. For Russia, it's partly about saying, hey, we're still relevant, especially with all this stuff in Ukraine.
Right.
But they also have their own interests to protect, like that naval base in Syria. Plus, they want to do business in the region.
Makes sense.
And then there's China. They're usually more low-key, right?
Yeah, they're not known for, like, sending in the troops.
Right. They're more about trade deals, building stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're already the top trading partner for a lot of those Middle Eastern countries.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but lately they've been flexing their military muscles a bit, too.
Oh, really? Like how?
Well, they brokered that peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, remember?
Wait, seriously? I totally missed that.
Yeah, big deal.
Yeah,
Especially since those two have hated each other for decades.
it's huge.
Major win for China. Definitely got Washington's attention.
Yeah, I bet.
Shows they're willing to step up and, maybe even edge out the U.S.
It's like U.S. foreign policy is at this crossroads.
Totally.
So many different things that could happen. Kind of overwhelming, honestly.
It's a lot, for sure, but that's why we're talking about it.
True.
Got to understand all sides of this thing.
Okay, so let's say worst case scenario, a year from now. What are we even looking at?
Well, one very real possibility is that Iran gets a nuke.
Yeah, that's what everyone's worried about.
It would be a game changer, not just in the Middle East, but for, the whole world.
So like a nightmare scenario, basically.
Pretty much.
Would other countries start making nukes too?
It's definitely a risk, like a nuclear arms race.
Oh, God.
If Iran gets one, Saudi Arabia will want one, Turkey might, maybe even Egypt, who knows?
And be chaos.
And then there's Israel. They've made it very clear they will not tolerate a nuclear Iran.
Right, zero tolerance.
So if they think diplomacy's failed and that the U.S. won't stop it, they might just take care of it themselves.
You're talking about like a preemptive strike on those Iranian facilities.
It's not impossible. And if that happens, well,
It'd be a huge war.
probably, and it wouldn't just stay contained to the Middle East either. Other countries, global superpowers, could easily get dragged in.
So it's not just a regional conflict. It could be like a world war. Man, that's a lot.
It's a scary thought, for sure. And we can't forget about the people caught in the middle of all this.
Right, right.
Any kind of war over there would be devastating.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in all the politics and the strategies and stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's people's lives on the line.
Exactly. This isn't some theoretical game. These decisions have real consequences for real people.
It makes you think, like, is there any way to de-escalate things, hit the brakes on this whole train wreck?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Right.
Some people think more diplomacy might work.
Yeah.
Maybe get the UN involved.
Okay.
Others say the only way is to, really lay down the law, maybe even threaten military action,
So basically, nobody really knows.
It's a tough situation. No easy answers, unfortunately.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening, I gotta say.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on, that's for sure.
For sure. The next few months, the election, all that, could change everything.
The decisions made now will have ripple effects for years to come.
It really makes you think about the bigger picture, It's easy to get caught up in our own lives.
Right.
But this stuff affects all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely. The world's a complicated place, and it's constantly changing.
That it is. Well, this has been incredible, seriously. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
Happy to do it. Always good to chat.
And to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive gave you a better picture of what's at stake in this election. It's not just some far-off thing. It affects the whole world.
The Middle East, Iran, it's all connected.
It's exactly. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that matters. But until then, stay curious, stay informed.
And thanks for diving deep with us.